Hello, my friends. Welcome to Two Priests on the Patio podcast. Here we gather in the quiet space between science and soul with Reverend Canon Sue Ann Warren and the Venerable Jeff Ward, partners in ministry and in life. We ask the deeper questions. What does it mean to be awake in this world? To suffer, to doubt, to believe, to begin again and again. This is a sanctuary for conversation. So come as you are. I'm Shay, and I get the privilege of being on this trip, being in this pod with these two very spectacular people who have dedicated their life to the pursuit of spiritual questions and leadership and caring, really caring deeply for their communities. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you.
We decided that we wanted to talk about Chapter 14 in The Awakening by Lisa Miller. Is this correct?
It is factually correct.
That is true.
Awakened attention.
Awakened attention. I loved this chapter for many obvious reasons, because it is so related to wellness and mindfulness. But there was another reason, and I felt like it was speaking directly to me. So Lisa Miller writes a story about Walter and how he discovered his calling. And Walter was also inspired by Howard Thurman. That's his name, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So many years ago, I had come across some of the writings of Howard Thurman, and I felt like it was being poured into me. So when I read that chapter, I thought, I really, outside of my discovery, I really don't hear about this person. So I just thought, this book is meant for me. What did you feel or think when you read about that example of Walter finding his purpose?
You just highlighted spectacularly what Lisa Miller talks about in terms of synchronicity. The whole story is about synchronicity, and then you engaging in that demonstrated that synchronicity carried to you as well. So, well,
The beauty is in the awareness that this man and his thoughts and his teachings have entered into Walter's life, and that there's been this beautiful thread throughout Walter's life of the impact, the experience, the blessing that Howard Thurman has been, and that he's aware of it. And I think that's part of the key, is that sometimes things come to us, they appear to us, they're given to us, and we don't even notice.
Right.
And Walter noticed.
Well, it's also about learning to pay attention to these events that happen that are not, they're not obvious, like to the obvious, like to the eye, but they are more sensation based. Like, I feel this to be true.
and that's actually a huge part of that story, is that when Walter engages with Howard, and he's asking Howard's input as to what should I do with my life? What am I called to do? And Howard teaches him how to be a listener, to be open, to be aware, right? He didn't understand how to do that before Howard introduced that to him. And so he tells him, I love how he describes it. He says, you're like a little boy in front of the Christmas tree with all these gifts, and you don't know which one to open first. And all he says to Walter is, just be still, be quiet, and let God speak to you. And whatever voice you hear inside, that will give you that guidance, that direction as to what you're called to do. And throughout his life, he was then open to listening. And by listening, he was able then to determine what he was going to do. He even ends up, being the world-renowned expert on Howard Thurman simply because he allowed himself that awareness, and he learned that from Howard.
Well, and it's not about being led by the achieving mind.
No.
Right? You're being led by listening to what cannot be seen but felt.
That's right. Being open to that still small voice within, and knowing when it is the voice of the Spirit, the voice of the divine, instead of our own voice, because we do talk to ourselves an awful lot.
True.
For me, the litmus test for that is this the most loving thing I can do?
Oh.
And if it is, then I think that's God.
Oh, can you just break that down a little bit? So is this the most loving thing, or is this the most loving response, or is this the most loving way to approach this person? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Ooh.
Because God is in that love. God is love. So I know that when what I'm hearing is just pure love, that it is the kindest, most generous, sweetest, most loving thing that I could be doing, then I know that's the voice of the divine.
Do you think that we have to train that into each other, into our society, or do you think that some of us are born knowing that? Because how do you come to understand and listen? Like, what do you know? Like, how do you know what to pay attention to?
So I do think that we are born with the ability to be open and aware. I think children are often very much more open and aware than adults are. We learn to put the blinkers on and close ourselves to what we want to achieve, to meeting our goals. And I sometimes wonder if that's what Jesus was talking about when he said that we should become like little children, that we should become more open and able to engage with life when life reaches out to us.
Even in the darkest moments, in the hardest moments.
Absolutely, yes. But I think, as Sue-Ann said, I think we're born with the capacity. But I do think how we are nurtured and these what our environment is as we age and we develop determines whether we continue with that openness or whether we close that. So when we were talking about Walter, for instance, his initial assumption was that he was going to be a lawyer. His achieving brain was telling him that was what he was called to do. And it was only by being encouraged to be open and shown how to do that again that he then makes the decision that he should follow a different path.
But it's the rejection, isn't it? It's the rejection of not getting into one of the programs that helps him to be open. Is that right?
I think it helps to guide his choice, but I think that sense of being open is something that he was encouraged and shown how to do by Howard Thurman. I don't think that was something that he was engaging in before that.
But sometimes it is those setbacks or those losses in our lives that kind of force us to take stock, to rethink, to be more open, because the path has become bumpy. When it's smooth, it's easy to just kind of keep our heads down and move ahead.
Yes.
But, when the road gets tough, when we've fallen and need to pick ourselves back up, when we've been sick or hurt, that I think is really when we are most open to finding new ways forward, new life-giving, healing ways.
Earlier we told you, because you asked us about our journey toward being priests, and it was us going through some very challenging times that we then took stock. And it wasn't that we decided to do something that we had never thought of before. We had just assumed that that's not what we could do or should do, that we were supposed to be doing the things we were doing, only doing more and doing better and so on. And it was only when we took that stock and said, wait a second, what do we really feel called to do? And that was when that awakened awareness led us down a completely different path.
It makes me think of that quote in the book, but from Howard Thurman, that Walter saw in Sally's room, or Sally's apartment. That was his woman who would be his wife. I think her name was Sally. And I'm going to butcher it, but let me try not to butcher it. He said, as long as you are dreaming, you cannot lose the significance of living. And it seems to me that was what happened with you all as you discovered your path and your spiritual path, and that could be that was a vocation, that was a calling, that you would need to transform your life. Many people are looking for significance in their life, and we're living in very complex and difficult times. And people are in a lot of distress right now. Do you think that your job, your role as priest, is to help people understand how to understand their significance?
I think our job is to help people to be in relationship with the divine and with others, and that they learn that through those relationships.
I think part of our role is, wherever it's possible, to play the role that Lisa talks about when she refers to trail angels or trail guides, to help people establish what they think that path for them could be, not to tell them, but to help facilitate a process for them so that they can determine that. I won't say exactly how old, but we have children who are approaching their sort of middle of life. And let me just say that all of them have either or are in the process of, and so many of their friends are reevaluating their lives at this point, realizing that so many things that they thought were best for them to pursue, to chase, are just not fulfilling for them. And when we talk to them, we're not telling them what they should do, but we certainly encourage them to keep opening themselves up to this awakened awareness. And some of them seem to be doing that very well on their own, which has been very inspiring for us. And we learn from them too, but it's just been, I think, something that is becoming more obvious to them and to us as we see them, that they are saying, wait, I need to think about, and some of them now are meditating, some of them now do a lot more praying. And the whole point of that is, how can I figure out what that voice inside me is telling me that I should be, opening myself up for.
And what is the process? Dr. Miller talks about meditation and different modalities. She speaks a lot about nature, about going outside and sitting and walking and being a part of the environment. What does that mean in terms of practicing Christian faith? There is a lot of going into the wilderness in the Bible, right? There's a lot of going out into nature.
Yes, because that is one way that God, that the Holy, is revealed to us. And we were made to be natural beings. We weren't made to be surrounded by concrete all the time. A researcher named Gregory Bratman noticed that there is a correlation between increased urbanization and increased mental illness. And so he did a number of studies that showed that, yes, in fact, walking in nature as opposed to walking in an urban core is much more healing, that it reduces anxiety, that improves people's affect, their mood, that it can help with things like addiction.
Yes.
And so I think it is important for us to make sure that we are always making time and space to engage with the natural world.
I think the stimulation we receive when we are in nature is radically different than the stimulation we receive when we're in an urban environment. So instead of the constant bombardment of sound and people and that sort of thing, you're just dealing with nature. And I think that allows for us to be more aware, awakened,
Yes.
than we are when we're in an urban environment, when we are surrounded by people and vehicles and buildings
Technology.
and technology and all of those things. I don't think it's I don't think it's an accident that when people are best, feel best, like you go for a retreat, for instance.
Yes.
It's not going to be in a concrete jungle, right? You're going on a retreat in a quiet, usually natural place.
Yes.
Because that way you're able to reduce all of that stimulation that you're receiving.
Yes, the sound, the vibration, the noise, the things that inflame you.
It's why your heart rate and your blood pressure are higher in those urban environments than it is when you're in a natural environment.
Right.
And we have some wonderful Christian examples. You have someone like St. Francis of Assisi who demonstrated for everybody that just all he wanted to do was be alone in nature with animals and with trees and so on, because that would be a wonderful calming place, but it would also be a way that he could connect with the divine most easily.
We've been chatting a little bit with a few friends from the church and letting them know that we're creating this podcast, this space. And so a few people have reached out and asked me, well, I'd like to ask a question that maybe I wouldn't ask in person for whatever reasons. And so do you think I could ask you a couple questions that I've had a couple parishioners share with me?
Of course, I am happy to make up answers anytime.
Okay.
And if this is less scary for them, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was so scary. But
No, I don't think it's about you being scary, either of you. I think you're not at all scary. I think it's about being self-conscious. Mm-hmm. I think it's about people feeling like, is there something not right with me for wondering about this? Does everybody else get this, but I don't? Mm-hmm. And also because, often, unless you make an appointment to see one of you privately, you're typically there with other people. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you don't want to share your most intimate concerns or worries. So one of the questions is a parishioner who is struggling with depression, and they have a kind of shame about feeling depressed, right? They said they feel ashamed about being depressed. They feel as though they have so much, but they don't know why they're depressed. And then the other part of it is that they are perpetually worried about what's happening in the world. So they've stopped watching the news, and then they're worried about not watching the news. and then they feel bad about the fact that they feel this sadness. So I thought maybe both of you could answer.
So you're inviting us to provide some guidance to that person?
Based on what we observe in chapter 14.
Mm-hmm. So we know from numerous studies that mental health challenges often result from a lack of spiritual practice and a lack of spiritual connection. We find that in order to be open and awakened to the world and to be healthy, there are certain practices in which we can engage. Prayer is one. Prayer is building our relationship with the divine. Mm-hmm. Singing, engaging in creative pursuits, whether it's artwork or musical, whether it's dance, writing poetry, walking in nature, which we've talked about, meditation, that's my personal go-to. I believe that because I intentionally meditate each day, I have been able to put aside, to some extent, that little me, that ego part of myself, and
Yes.
become more my true self.
Yes.
The self that I am with Christ. And that has enabled me to engage with the world and to see the beauty in the world and the truth in the world. Because the news, that's only a little bit of life.
Yes,
You know?
yes.
And we need to have some idea of what's going on, but we don't need it 24/7.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was a woman named Cheryl Gaver who's a United Church minister, and one of the things that she said that really stuck with me is that it's news because it's exceptional, because that's not what most people's life experience is. Most people are loving and kind and helpful, and the things that make the news are often negative because they're not.
And because they're exceptions
Yeah.
to the norm.
That's right.
Oh, I love that.
I also love the fact that she was a minister at our church at St. Cuthbert's for years, and she related so well to young people, especially youth, because she was unique as well. So
Yes, yes.
the fact that she's talking about exceptional, she was exceptional, and she connected with these young people so amazingly well. The only other thing I might add to what Sue Ann said, because I think she said almost everything that I could think of, was that people who are struggling with life and are feeling depressed, or at least feeling down, we did talk before about engaging in community, but healthy community, and doing things that are helpful to other people. Altruism can really be helpful when people have that sense of being overwhelmed, because you're first of all, you're getting out of yourself, and second of all, I think all of us respond well when we help others, and we know that. We just had a dinner for the Kerr Street Mission last week, and everybody who was engaged in that just felt so uplifted after they had engaged in that activity, partly because they were connecting with neighbors they would otherwise never connect with. And just that they worked together as a community as well, so they got to know each other better. But it just took them away from what they had been dealing with every day, all day. But it put them in a very healthy space, doing
Yes.
something very helpful for people who really needed their help.
Well, it makes you feel alive, and to feel and see someone else benefiting from your service. That does not cost money. It costs your time and your presence.
I think people feel good when they do that because they feel like they have a real sense of purpose.
Yes.
They have a worthiness of value, because what I just did helped these other people in a really important way. Therefore, I feel much better about me.
I think it's also about living in the now.
Yes.
When you're engaged in assisting somebody else, you're paying attention to who they are in the moment, their current situation. And spiritual practices are designed to keep us in the current moment, to allow us to let go of what we might have been ruminating about, all those things that we lamented that we should have done differently, could have done better, whatever, or worrying about the future, what might happen, which likely won't, but what might happen.
Yes, and that you can't control.
And that you can't control, but to stay in the present. I mean, that's where our comfort is. That's where we can experience joy and peace. And I think that part of the reason why nature is so healing is because when we're in nature, we're often in the moment. We're marveling at the beauty of the flowers and how birds can fly and the majesty of the trees and
Yes.
how everything works together.
Yes.
So we're not ruminating and we're not worrying. We're living
In the moment.
in the moment.
Speaking of that, for you, Sue Ann, with mindfulness and your commitment to meditation, Could you walk us through a process that you would, take yourself through if you were feeling, a bit vulnerable, or you're feeling the pressures of the world are heavy today? What is there a thought process you might go through?
If we're talking specific to meditation, what I find myself doing is letting go, and then letting go, and then letting go. So first I do it physically, because I find that when I'm experiencing that, I am tense. My shoulders are up around my ears. Everything is tense. My back is sore. My jaw is tight. And so I specifically let go of all of that tension, and I just give it to God, because God can accept that from me. And once I've sort of calmed down my physicality, then I can start to work on my mind. And the way that I do that is just to take up a sacred word. One that's often used in Christian meditation is the word Maranatha, which just means "Come, Lord," but it's an Aramaic word. Aramaic is the language Jesus spoke. And it's not to think about the meaning of the word, but just to listen to the sound of it in your head as you are meditating, and to focus on that sound and just being in the presence of God. And sometimes it takes a little while for us to calm down.
Yes.
But if we are consistent, if we just continue to focus on our sacred word, the waters of our brain, they still, and we are able to just be present with God. Doesn't mean that thoughts and feelings don't come. They do. But we then can just let them go.
Right.
Let them go, and not hold on to these things that might agitate us.
And it allows the mind to literally move into a new process. Right? At least that Dr. Miller talks about that.
I just want to remind us, though, that we call it spiritual practices for a reason. You keep practicing it. You don't just do it once or just think about it and it just happens. I've watched Sue Ann go through this process many times, and it's breathing, it's getting into a certain posture and so on. And she even has a wonderful app that helps guide her in terms of her meditation and her time. And she dedicates that to that. So she repeats that very regularly. So it isn't just, I did it once. It's not like taking an antibiotic and it goes away and all is done and now you're set for whatever length of time. You have to keep practicing this. You get better at it. Some days you do better than other days, because sometimes you can drive those thoughts away, and other days you really have trouble doing that. But you get much better at it through practice, and you keep sort of incrementally improving how you feel over time by practicing it again and again.
And it's not about pushing the thoughts away. It's about letting them go. Because actually when we try to push away certain thoughts that are troubling us, they get stronger.
Yes.
So it's about letting them go.
You all are singing, you're singing my song, but I like the word discipline in relationship to the practice of meditation or mindfulness. And I think because discipline is not about hardness or strictness in its essential meaning, it's really about the consistent practice, and it's through the practice that you change or evolve, or you learn to be with the thing that is hurting you. So if we bring it back to the parishioner who is, worried about having this conversation, but these things are really plaguing her, would you say to her it's about learning to sit with the discomfort and still breathing into the present of the moment? Is that how you would?
I think that is a helpful way of expressing it.
Yeah.
I think also that community is important.
Mm.
And there is something about meditating in community, or singing in a choir, or walking with a friend. And so I would encourage that.
Yeah, I think it's hard when we're feeling down, depressed, to be with other people. We just
Yes.
feel like we just want to stay by ourselves, stay away from people. But I do think that being in community, well, just being present with others. I just came from the church, and there were a whole bunch of seniors, mostly, all of them were from China, and they're having an amazing time together, and there's no way you could have been in that group and not felt uplifted.
Yes. Yes.
And so the choice between being at home and just being by myself, maybe with all the lights off, or being in a group like that where you have people who just love you, care about you, and just want you to be well, I can't see how you could still remain feeling that way when you're in that environment. So I say being in community with people who care about you is always healthier than being just by yourself, especially if you're, Sue mentioned this earlier, ruminating about things, right? Whether it's the past or the future, as you said, things you have no control over or very little control over. Whereas instead, if you're with this group of people, you're just enjoying life.
It's about being in community. About being in community with others requires knowing how. And where I'm going with this is that it seems like people are unlearning how to be in community because we have our phones and we're so connected on, I was on the GO train yesterday and I just decided to look around and everyone had their neck. I was so worried the yoga person in me was so worried because everyone's neck was, curved over and everyone was looking at their phone. And I just thought, imagine if we were all looking at each other, if we were actually speaking to each other. But that would be weird, right? It would be weird to just start talking to people or, saying, how are you? We would find that strange. And I think that's because we are unlearning the behavior of being in relationship with others who don't even have to be connected to you. You're just being a human being.
We've been spending a lot of time walking in Toronto lately. And if you want to shock somebody, you look them in the eye and say hello. But I think that's even true in Oakville. When we walk in our own neighborhood, we shock people when we just say, hi, how are you? How are you doing? Not our immediate neighbors who at least recognize who we are, but anybody who doesn't know us. It's shocking. And I really think it's a horrible situation. And probably the pandemic just sort of made it worse when we all got locked down. And although I have to say, even then, at least when we went out for those walks, when you escaped and you went on trail walks and you'd see all those beautiful stones where people had painted messages and so on. So they were trying to stay connected. And I think that uplifted a lot of people. But it was a reminder that any connection and community can help us to feel better and be healthier.
Do you think that's the role of spiritual homes and communities, churches and temples now to help reinforce that connection that we can talk? You can always come here. You can always you have a home here.
That's always been true.
And it's about really seeing people and loving them for who they are, because we all need that. Right? We need people to see us, to care about us, to know us, and to love us for who we are. Not the facade we put on.
Yes.
But really who we are. And in a healthy faith community, that's what you find.
There's a couple of folks in our parish who had life partners for 40 or 50 years who recently lost those life partners. And both of them have said to me the only reason why they are able to keep going every day is because they have this church community, and this church community keeps encouraging them, supporting them, holding them up, caring for them. And otherwise they would be in such a deep depression they wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah, someone said to me, we were chatting, and they told me that the community was important to their wife. And so they didn't think a lot about it before, but when they come, it reminds them of her. And so that's part of why it's important for them to come. But now their friends have grown, and their wife has not been replaced, obviously, but there's a service there. And I felt like that's an amazing thing for her to leave for her partner also, right? Powerful. Last question, because the time is just flying by. and for those of you who are not in the room with us, it's 99 degrees outside. So we're like in this beautiful cool space.
And it's so cool that Jeff needs to wear his music box hoodie.
Yes. Well, now I think Jeff is going to be doing his sermon in a hoodie.
I like it.
But in this same chapter 14, Dr. Miller talks about the 3 doors. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? I think that's a great image to leave our audience with.
Yes, okay. So this is a spiritual practice that Lisa Miller developed herself. And essentially what she invites people to do is to create a timeline of their life, and then to think of a time when a door closed on them. And she calls those closed door moments the red door. So it's a time when you thought you had everything lined up, you knew what you were going to do, and you were working towards it, and everything was great, and then it wasn't. And things didn't go the way you thought they would go, and that door closed on you. And then you take some time, create some space, open yourself up, you look around because you have to, because that door closed. So now you have to figure out what is next. But you see a yellow door. There's a new opportunity that's present to you, that has been gifted to you by life, by the universe, by the consciousness that's in and through all of us. And that yellow door presents something wonderful, something even better than the red door. And so you have this beautiful yellow door moment, and then she invites us to think about who along the way helped us, guided us, who were our trail angels or trail guides, the people that might have nudged us towards that yellow door or in some way facilitated that new experience. And she invites us to do that 3 times to really get a handle on our life. So that's why it's the 3 doors.
Yes.
Because you find 3 experiences of red doors.
Yes. So the closed door and then an opening, a closed door and an opening. So it's really training your mind also to see that a closed door is not the end.
That's right.
It's just that path is not the right path, but there's always another.
That's right. So what seems like just a terrible thing can be an opportunity for something else.
I very much love that. I thank you both for your grace and your kindness and your generosity. I am always better for seeing both of you.
And so are we for seeing you. Yes. Thank you.
And your wonderful spirit.
2 priests on the patio. Sure hope you enjoyed the show. If there's anything you want to know, just ask 2 priests on the patio. Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for being with us. If this stirred something in you, share the episode and subscribe. The path of awakening isn't linear. It's layered, lived, and often lonely. But you are not alone. We'll meet you in the stillness, in our prayers. We'll meet you in the questions. And until next time, stay compassionate, stay open, stay awake.